G'day, my name is Michelle. I'm from CGG Wildlife Rescue, and today we're on CGG TV and we're going to talk about wildlife rescue in the Midwest. I've been working with wildlife for over 25 years, and I've been up here in the Midwest for just under 15 running the Greenough Wildlife Park, and also found that there was a huge niche for wildlife rescue up here. So we actually set up CGG Wildlife Rescue to go out, educate people, make them understand about the amazing endemic animals that live in the region up here that we're very fortunate to share our backyard with. But most importantly, to let people know that these guys need a voice, and they need to know what to do if they find one that's in distress or needs care, but most importantly to know whether or not to leave an animal or to call somebody like myself to come and pick it up. Been doing this rescue work ranging from removing venomous snakes out of people's houses and making them understand that we live in the Midwest where with this wild diversity of wildlife, we're occasionally going to find something in the wrong area. This week alone I've had 3 seabirds turn up in Wandina, Utakara and Wagrikine Primary School. All 3 of them got blown from the islands, made it down here into town, and they were obviously displaced because they should be back in the ocean. So a couple of days of rehab, they've been back and educating the homeowners to let them know why they ended up there, and obviously thanking them for giving me a call to come and remove them, because being displaced and having domesticated pets in the backyard would have been a bit of a death sentence for these poor little seabirds. So starting with reptiles, we have these amazing backyards up here. We have the beautiful sun so much times of the year, and we have a lot of wildlife, and you know, for not everybody's cup of tea, it includes my favourites, which are reptiles. So we have venomous snakes, we have monitors, goannas, we have skinks, and we have a huge arrangement of geckos. So my work involves, in the hotter months, heading out and relocating reptiles from people's backyards. It's very important to me as a wildlife carer that we try to postcode release every time. If I remove every reptile from a particular area and then go and put them in another area, I have to understand the importance of the impact on that environment. So I have to know in my research where I'm relocating that animal to, the fact that I'm not overpopulating, and making sure that that snake or lizard is going to be safe where I'm putting it. So a lot of thought process goes into relocation and obviously where they go, and it's also very important for me to educate the homeowners. So to say, hey, you've got a huge rockery in that backyard, that rockery's heating up in the morning, you've got this perfect little area for a snake to head into and feel nice and safe all year round, and you're wondering why your backyard is full of snakes in summer. You've created an environment for the reptile to live in. So if you've got young kids, then you have to be aware of how your backyard and the landscape of your backyard actually attracts wildlife. So when it comes to reptiles, being aware, if we actually spot one in our backyard, get someone to keep an eye on it, then get another person to call a reptile relocator. Never ever try to move that reptile yourself. Reptiles can be just like humans, especially if they're scared. They can be unpredictable, and they can lash out, and that might mean a goanna chomping on your hand, which has happened to me, or a snake lashing out, and being on the receiving end of a venomous snake when it's grumpy is going to make you very sick. So people like myself are trained to grab them, and we're trained to grab them professionally so that we cause less stress to the animal, which is really, really important. We're very lucky to have a lot of people in this town that care for wildlife. I'm very fortunate to deal with them pretty much every week. People call, they ask questions, and one of the little joeys that I've got here in front of me was actually picked up by a farmer who spotted her in the middle of the road, picked her up, and for years and years he thought of these little buggers as pests until his mum raised one, and he realised that you know, they were a little bit different, and he rang me to come and get her after finding her in the middle of the road. Now, he could have left her, and he could have left this kangaroo joey to slowly die. Foxes will remove the joeys from their mum's pouch, take them home and teach their kits to hunt by using a live animal, but also sadly the crows and other carrions like eagles will come down and take them away. So if you do hit a kangaroo, you might not be, confident enough to pull it out of the pouch, and that's where you call people like myself again, because simple factors that come into play: your safety. If you're dragging a kangaroo off the road first upright, always grab it by the base of the tail. Grabbing them by a leg or other appendage has often resulted in someone pulling it and that coming out from its socket, which is not very good for people that aren't experienced. So if you can get it off the side of the road, grab it by the base of the tail, drag it away. So if a wedge-tailed eagle comes down to eat that, which is circle of life, you're not then going to have the wedge-tailed eagle with a crop full of meat having to take off on the road and being hit by a car as well. So you're not going to get the two fatalities, and the wildlife are going to feed each other. If you do see a pouch or a bulge and you know that there's something in there and you think, nah, I can't do that, call someone like myself. You don't necessarily have to stay there, but if you can, it does help me out. And I'm happy to come along, or one of the other wildlife carers, to come and check that pouch, because even though that kangaroo can be hit by a car doing 80 kilometres an hour, the pouch is such a cocoon safe area. Mum can go and sadly pass away, and then you can find something cute like this little guy sitting in the pouch, waiting to be picked up and waiting to be taken into care. And all animals here in the region, especially our native wildlife, are protected under the Wildlife Act. And the Wildlife Act now states, as from January 1 last year, that if you do find any native or displaced wildlife, you need to call a licensed carer within 72 hours. We have done all our courses to maintain the animals going to be given the correct feed, the correct formula, fed regularly due to its weight. But most importantly, we have release programs for these guys to go back into the bush. So not going onto farmers' land where they're going to become an issue, but heading back into the bush where they belong. And it's very important that they are released with a buddy, so that they know they're kangaroos, which is very, very important. So the main animals that you are going to see up here, it's going to be kangaroos. We've talked about reptiles, and then we've got birds. We have a time of the year where we call it our busy season in spring, and it's the time of the year where birds will fall out of nests. It's also the time of the year that a lot of people will kidnap a perfectly healthy bird. So once again, we go back to the same information. Call a carer, ask for advice. We need you people to be our eyes. We need you people to look around, enjoy this beautiful Midwest we live in, enjoy our endemic wildlife, but also be aware that if you see a little bird on the ground and it's the middle of spring, that bird can either be a fledgling or a branch hopper. So when a bird is born, hatched, it actually is in the nest, and it's we have two sorts of birds. We have altrical and precocial. And what that means is some birds, when they're hatched, like an emu, they're hatched straight away, they're up on their feet, they're pecking within an hour. They're independent to a particular point because they can move around and follow their parents, similar to domesticated chickens. Then we have the other sort, which are the altrical birds, are like gumnut here. They're hatched out of an egg. You right, mate? They're hatched out of an egg, and they actually are dependent on their parents straight away. So if they fell from a nest onto the floor, they would not have the strength to get up and walk away, and their mum or dad would not be able to pick them up and carry them back up to the nest. So the difference there is being able to observe a bird and go, right, that bird's on the ground, it's got no feathers, it looks like it can't move, its legs aren't working, and so that altrical species needs to go into care. And we do that in a particularly few steps. We will once identify the bird. We will see whether or not there's domesticated animals around, cats, which sadly predate upon our native birds every year, and our native lizards and snakes. But what we would do then is we would make a makeshift nest, and we would place a hanging basket with something on the bottom. One of my mates ingeniously used a pair of undies once and lined it with leaves, and that's all she had. And she placed that up in a tree under my instructions, placed the bird on the leaves, and I said, just stand back, take your domesticated pets inside. And within an hour, mum bird was coming down and feeding her young out of that nest. And fantastic news, that bird left the nest about 20 days later and is still flying around her garden with his family. So I didn't need to take that bird into care by her asking the correct questions and me answering them. And then we have Gumnut, who came out of a nest with 5 of his brothers. He was really sick after a few weeks. We couldn't find his parents. His tree was actually cut down to nothing. So the parents would have returned that afternoon, realised that the whole nest was gone, and we had no other trees in the area to actually put him and his siblings up nice and safely. There was nothing we could do where we knew his parents would find him, because the whole tree and everything around it was sadly taken down to development. So Gumnut here came in, but he got sick when he was about 4 months old, and he stayed in care. Sadly, he's half the weight of a normal galah his age, and he's now just used as an educational bird with the permission of Department of Parks and Wildlife. So birds, please be aware if you spot them. Don't necessarily grab them. I probably get about maybe 15 magpies that I say are bird napped every year. People see them. We have to understand, if a bird is on the ground and it's walking around and it looks like it's young, then we definitely need to understand that what happens is the parents that are around, they are scared of us. So that young bird will remain still, and people will go, oh, it's tame, let me pick it up. And that bird is tame. Right then at that point, it hasn't been taught by its parents to be afraid of us. But the parents are probably sitting up in the tree going, oi, we're teaching our bird to do stuff and you've just come and taken off with it. And last year alone, I had 12 magpies brought into me. I took every one of them back to where they were picked up from, and 100% of them came down, found their young, and they all took back off up the tree again. So know the difference between a branch hopper, a fledgling, and an animal that needs care. But don't just take it upon yourself to just remove that bird. Call up for advice. And if you have domesticated pets in your backyard, then please bring them inside. The amount of times people ring and say, there's a echidna in my backyard, I've never seen one in the area. Echidnas are everywhere around here, but they're nocturnal. So if they make it into your backyard, trust me, they're going to make their way out. So, but having your dog barking in its face and giving it a bit of fear might limit the time it's actually going to stay there, and it may bury down and stay there a lot longer. So if you bring your dog inside, leave it overnight, I guarantee you that echidna will be gone by the morning. And on an end note, learn about our wildlife. Learn about what lives in your area. Go to the museum. They sell the most amazing books about our local wildlife. So, you know, sit outside with your kids, bird spot. I do the annual bird spotting every year where we actually do a bird count, which is Australia-wide, and I get so many of my mates to do it in their backyard, and they'll go, wow, we didn't know that we had this here, or we didn't know we had this here. We have such an amazing, amazing diversity of animals up here, and we should be fortunate enough to know about them, to teach our kids about them, and to appreciate them. So for any further information, get on our Facebook page, CGG Wildlife Rescue. We have Instagram and other platforms, and if you can't find me, ring CGG TV at the local shire, and I'm sure they'll send you my way. Thanks for listening.